Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello. Al is coming through Bayview right now. My phone just beeped at me. So,
Yep.
Hey, Victor, I typed up that letter for the county and sent it to you here a little bit ago.
I just saw that. Thanks. That's awesome.
Okay.
That's going to be great. Going to move on. Yeah.
Hi, Victor.
Yeah, Jim. Hey, Jim. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Well, thank you.
Good. Glad to hear it.
You have a good weekend?
Yes, it was very nice. Yeah. How about you?
It was good. I'm just still waiting for the snow. That Harbor Springs winter that I was warned about, but has never came yet.
Have you been out even on the hill much or not?
Yeah, I've been in Nubs probably about 8-9 times so far, so it's been nice. But
Yeah, that's great. Good.
get some night skiing.
I think we're supposed to get a fair amount on Thursday and Friday. I was thinking about you, Victor, because the next 2 days are supposed to be sunny and nice, but then at one point I saw like 6 to 10 or something like that on Thursday and Friday.
Well,
So
that'd
that'll
be
help.
exciting.
Yeah, that would help. That would help.
I hope not.
There's a guy who works.
Go ahead.
Some of us don't need the snow to help us work. Right,
Yeah,
John?
that's
Yeah.
true. That's true.
We have anyone on YouTube?
Good afternoon, all.
Hey, John.
Hello, John.
On.
Hi, Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Hey, Al.
hey, Matt.
Hey, Matt.
Let you all know Nick is not feeling well, so we'll have Andy substituting as the roll call. Nick just not feeling too well today, so.
Nothing serious, I hope.
Hope not to. But given the month we've had, you never know. And Al Dyka, I'm sure you've seen the text. He's probably not going to make it for the beginning of the meeting. And if this is probably going to be a shorter than normal meeting, so he said he was at what, Bayview 5-6 minutes ago. So
Have Kyle give him an escort into town.
You can get your comments on your nice shirt.
I don't think Mike Matrikis is online.
Good.
Maybe. A few people on YouTube.
All right. Looks like it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Andy, could you give us a roll call, please?
Yes. Bugera,
Here.
Look,
Rondell,
and your location.
Yep, in Harbor Springs.
Yes, and Bagheera is here in Harbor Springs.
Mr. Cup,
Yes, here in Harbor Springs.
John Leo,
Here in Harbor Springs.
Mr. Dyke is going to be a few minutes late. Mr. Mayor, we do have a quorum.
Excellent. We got some minutes from the January 18th meeting to approve.
I read through them. They looked accurate. So unless there are other observations, I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Leo, second by Rondell for the acceptance of the January 18th minutes. Bugera,
Yes.
Rondell,
Yes.
Cups,
Yes.
and Leo.
Yes.
The minutes passed.
Excellent. Bill Committee,
I think
guess
that that would be me this time. I did look at the bills. They look fine. So I would make a motion that we accept them, approve them.
I'll second that.
Motion by Rondell, second by Leo to accept the bills. Bugera,
yes.
Rondell,
Yes.
Cups,
Yes.
and Leo.
Yes.
And the bills get paid.
Very good. All right, it's time for citizens' comment. If anyone has a comment to make that's not on the agenda tonight, this is your chance. Please identify yourself with your name and your address, please.
Jody Eubank, representing Stafford's Pier Restaurant, 102 Bay Street.
Hi, Jody, go ahead.
I think I talked to you, Mayor, and Mr. Cups, and talked to Victor about possibly having some fire pits in the grassy knoll on President's Weekend. Thinking probably Saturday and Sunday. The DDA will, if you approve this, take that over as and they can promote it and advertise it. So it wouldn't be for the Pier Restaurant. We would encourage all other restaurants to sell their drinks to go and have people out by the fire pits. John, Leo,
Yes.
what do you think?
Sounds like a very appropriate topic for the application for an event at a public park, which we're going to get into. But I really like the idea. I think it would be a great attraction and kind of appropriate for President's Day.
We might like this to go, I mean, as we see how it goes the first time. If we could potentially continue through the winter, and I've talked to John Cups about possibly having him build us a fire pit that we could utilize throughout the entire winter.
Jody, this is Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
I think it sounds like a great idea. Can you clarify for me where these would be when you say on the grassy knoll? I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean.
On the grassy area next to the pier, behind the gazebo.
Okay, so part of Marina Park.
Part of Marina Park.
Okay,
Would
okay.
this be the area where the shade sales were?
Margot?
Close.
So, I would say Jody and I've talked a lot about this, and I've reached out also to Victor and to John Cups, the fire chief, and as the fire chief, and then Kyle. It would be in the Marina Park area, kind of spread out. We're thinking 3 to 4 pits. As you know, that weekend is also the Ice Fest weekend. So we're hoping that there'll be people coming to town to shop and dine, and it might be a good place to have a cocktail or wait for a table, and then see how it goes for other weekends. And then after talking with Kyle, he has felt our one concern was whether they needed to be staffed all the time, but he felt, and also after speaking with John Cups, that between DDA members that might just help out with the fires, and then staff peer that are there, and then Kyle said he would be willing to have his staff kind of patrol the area. They felt that was enough staffing / supervision for the fire pit area, probably running from about 5 to 8 on Saturday and Sunday evenings of that weekend.
And my staff, Natalie, my bartender, would make sure that the fires are out. and that they were cleaned for the next night on Sunday, from Saturday going into Sunday. I would hesitate to call it an event, though, just from a COVID standpoint. I don't know if it's really an event. It's just, Matt, I guess for you and maybe any other of the restaurateurs, it would just be, well, we're on a wait. It's going to be about 20 minutes, but you can't wait in the lobby. Take a drink and go sit over by the fire pits, and we'll call you when your table's ready, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. What are the fire pits going to be? Are they those little chimenea things, something that holds the wood or the fire? Or, I mean,
Well,
you're not going to just set it up on the ground.
Well, mine stands 15 inches high. It has 15-inch legs. And so does Kristen's, my assistant, and Natalie's. And
I know what you're talking about there, those elevated.
yeah, they're square, and they're not big at all.
Right.
Yeah, that was my only thing, Matt, was that they had them elevated so that they weren't on the blacktop or the grass. So we didn't have to worry about them, doing any damage to anything, kind of thing. So.
Does the city have any liability? I hate to even ask this, but do they have any liability if somebody gets hurt at them, or a little kid burns himself, or is there any issue with that? Or is there some way we can cover that if there is an issue?
Jim, if you want to take this one.
I think, I think it's a city spot. If the city is sponsoring and allowing this to occur on its own property, there is potential liability. Obviously, you would need, I would suggest that we check this with our insurer just to make sure we're covered. But it's like any other event that the city, in effect, permits on its property. There is a potential for exposure. The only other thing I question a little bit is the use of alcohol on city property. We have this administrative ordinance that's underway, and I mean, has Kyle blessed the use of alcohol at this point?
I don't care. I shouldn't say I don't care. I'm not going to contest the use of alcohol down there. Like as we did in the summer in that area of itself, walking up and down Main Street, I'm probably against that, especially when we have the ice sculptures down there and we have kids down there seeing them. I don't think it's a good thing. But if people want to take alcohol down there and stand by the fire, I don't have a problem with that.
I do think though the combination of, alcohol and fire gets back to the issue of supervision. Not only that, but someone's going to have to be there to, add wood as it gets consumed. So as long as that's covered, I think we're okay.
Well, we planned on doing that. The
Right.
pier.
And I think members of the DDA were willing to kind of add to the fires and come down and keep an eye out too, as they, just watching over the whole.
Right.
Well, I guess my comment here is to say, I guess council's real, what we're seeking, or they're seeking from council, is if this is approvable, I guess maybe we can sit down with Chief Knight, Chief
Right.
Cups, and DDA and work out as long as supervision and safety and all that is covered. If council gives us a blessing, then let's go ahead and do it. Normally I would take this to council for agenda item, but it's 2 weeks away. It's before our next council meeting. So just a quick decision has to be made here. And if there's no opposition, yep, Chief Knight.
Yeah, just Mr. Raymer, is this a continuation? I mean, can we continue our alcohol on the Marina Park as we carried it through the summer?
Well, what's only thing I can tell you is that had an automatic sunset provision in it. There's an administrative ordinance that is being contemplated at the Planning Commission, and with respect to some zoning issues. What might be appropriate is for the council tonight to approve the provisions of the administrative ordinance that sunsetted that related to use of the city parks, designated portions of city parks for consumption of alcohol under that administrative ordinance. Then I think you would be in a position to be able to say legally it's okay.
That was my concern, is just that we're opening up the can. I'm good with it, but I don't want to, like, in 5 weeks from now, go downtown and have no teeth to an ordinance that we had in place. So I'm in 100% agreement allowing people to have alcohol down there, maybe specifically for this weekend. Does that meet your needs, Jody or Margot?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I mean, was this originally a was this a mandate, or was this a Whitmer executive order that I read that was supposed to go till like 2025? They called them social areas in towns.
Yeah,
And
Jody, that allowed municipalities to approve those such things, but we have to approve it on a local level. So
okay.
that's what Jim's getting at here, that we would just need to approve that on the local level. And Jim and Mayor, I mean, I don't know if you want to tackle that here at citizen comments, or do you want to wait till City Council new and old business to maybe take on that motion, or just decide if you want to adopt that ordinance now? I don't know what's more appropriate, but at this point.
Well, I'd be willing to make a motion that we reinstate the alcohol at Marina Park for the President's Day weekend and allow for 4 supervised fire pits.
I'll second that.
Motion by Bulgaria, second by Cups. I guess we're reinstating Administrative Order 2020-1, which allows alcohol to be consumed within the social zone of the Marina Park. Bulgaria,
Yes.
Cups,
Yes.
Rondell,
Yes.
Leo.
Yes.
Is Mr. Dyka on with us now, or?
I don't see him yet.
Not yet.
And that motion passes.
Excellent.
And Victor, I'll help out however I can. I won't be here that weekend, but I can help out with whatever going into it. So.
All right, thanks, John.
Thank you all.
Thank
May
you.
may I ask one question? So we have not adopted that, or you have not adopted that yet as a law in the city, as a, what am I trying to?
Yeah.
What you're trying to say,
Thank you.
you're trying to say it as a social district. And when they laid out the social districts, that area doesn't necessarily apply to a social district because it's supposed to be adjoining to bars and restaurants. And that was our problem then, if I remember correctly.
Yep, that's correct.
That is correct.
Oh, okay. So tonight, if one of my guests goes out there, is that we're not supposed to be doing that?
That is correct.
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that expired back in September.
November. Yeah, something like that. November 1st, I believe. Yep.
Okay, well, nobody saw anything. Just kidding. All right, well, thanks, you guys, and either Margot or myself can be available anytime to work out anything that you need from us.
Okay, thank you, Jody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you
Have a
all.
good night.
Yep. Anyone else for citizens comment on the student
Chief Knight.
total?
We have Chief Knight who wants to make a comment.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and council members, I just want to give you a brief update. You've read the bulletin, and I know Victor's kept you informed of what happened last Monday. I'm just going to try to make this quick, but we received the call right here in our office. Emily took the call, and the gentleman called our office. Normally on bomb threats, that doesn't necessarily happen. It normally goes to a business or something like that, or a school. She kept him on the phone. Tyler Swiss was the officer working at that time. He called me. Thank God he was in the office. She started snapping her fingers to try to get his attention. She put him on speakerphone, and then Tyler right off the bat called me and said, "Hey, this is what we got going on." And I asked Tyler to go downtown and start evacuating some of the buildings and telling the other people to shelter in place. From there, I came in and started conversation with the individual and had several things to do. And so between them and then I didn't want to leave her alone. I called Victor and on my cell phone, and he responded immediately and was a great asset. I was glad to have Victor there because he was that phone call I made. I knew with his demeanor, personality, and ability to communicate, he would help Emily, which allowed me to make the calls I did to the school. Called Mr. Bierman. We got that going right off the bat where we sheltered in place with our schools. And then the state police, I asked for their assistance, in the Emmett County Sheriff's Office, Fire Department, Petoskey, and all the agencies started coming our way. And from there, we had our command center was right here at the police department, and Petoskey provided us with a negotiator, which is crucial to try to keep this individual on the phone. And then also I requested a negotiator from the state police, and they provided one as well. Sort of like I said, we set up a little instant command right here at our office. We had the sheriff, undersheriff, myself, two lieutenants from the state police, and we sort of just put everything together, got the bomb squad on their way, secured the downtown area. And throughout this process, also we realized that we were using the steeple cam from the church, and the suspect was using the steeple cam from the church at the same time. So once we were able to realize that, we got the camera moved off thanks to city staff, and things de-escalated at that time. And we just waited till the bomb squad got here, and they went downtown, swept the town or downtown area with a Bearcat, and then went and did it on foot and cleared the downtown area. Just that's it real quick. If any council member has a question, feel free to call me or a suggestion or anything like that. Just not to take up too much time tonight. Petoskey Public Safety and the Emmett County Sheriff's Office and Michigan State Police, they all stepped up to the plate. This would be, I call normally a tabletop exercise, because it'd be something you sit around, you tabletop in anticipation that you might have something like this come down the road. We did it real life, and everybody came together, everybody worked together, and it went. I know we had flaws, and we were learning from that. I call them lessons to be learned. I've got a pretty lengthy list of that, but for the most part, we probably inconvenienced some people, but everybody was safe, and I felt that everybody did an outstanding job, and I appreciate everybody stepping up to the plate and assist. The two people I really want to commend, they're not here tonight, but Emily Britton, our administrative assistant, she's been here since the 15th of December, so just over a month. Not only did she take the call and kept the guy on the line and remain calm, once we got the negotiator in here, lesson to be learned from us, we didn't necessarily know where to start, try to find this individual. It rang anonymous on our phone call or on our phone here, so she had to track down to see where this number was coming from. She got us hold of CBTS, and she did it all on her own. She's just stepped up to the plate. And then Officer Tyler Swiss, the only officer working at that time, goes downtown, a one-man wrecking crew, and goes door to door and tries to secure all the businesses, lock people down, evacuate by himself. And he did a stellar job. So those two people really, really helped. And I want to thank Victor. Victor came over. He was inoculation by fire. He was right here, right off the bat, and he stayed here the entire time until he saw everything through. And I'm very pleased with our little police department, how it handled it. Our fire department, Chief Cups, helped us out, and everybody came together, and we're learned today at 2:00. I held a debrief with the sheriff, undersheriff, lieutenants from the state police, the lieutenants from Petoskey, And our emergency, one person other, Jill McDonald, our emergency management director, she helped us out a lot too. She did the B alert. She did our press releases while this incident was going on. So we all had a debrief today, and we got quite a lengthy list of things that we can improve on. Hopefully we never have to do it again, but we had a good meeting today. So that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kyle. You guys did a great job, and keep up the good work.
Yep,
Thank you.
I agree. Good job.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right. Now, do we have real citizens comment?
I see Al joined. Thank you, Al. We do have, yep, we have 2 comments that came. I sent you guys, the council, an email earlier this morning. We also got 2 that just trickled in the past couple hours. One was for public comment. One was from Kathleen Leo asking to see if we could keep the lights on the trees on Main Street for a little bit longer. And after talking with DPW and Nick, there's no problem to keep them on for another month or so. The costs are negligible at this point, but that's unless council's opposed to that, I can keep the lights on for another month through March 15th.
Didn't they take most of them down today?
They're not the ones on Main Street, I don't think. The ones on Main Street downtown stay up till February 15th normally, typically.
Okay, they just took them off all the trees then.
Yeah, they took them off down here by City Hall and stuff today.
We used to leave them on until after President's Weekend.
Yep. February 15th. Yeah, that's what it'd be this month.
Oh, so she wants us to go longer. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to that at this point, but at the future, we look at the pros and cons of either leaving them up all year or not, or when to take them down. That could be another discussion at this point, but I'm fine with leaving them on for a few more weeks after that. An email again from Sue Winter asking about the short-term rental ordinance, about if single-family zoning still applies to everyone to basically everyone in those districts. And even though we took out single-family from the short-term rental use, Attorney Jim Raymer, Jeff Grimm, and we talked, and we do believe that they're still zoned as single-family residents. So technically, there only can be used as single-family houses, even though they're not. It doesn't say that in the short-term rental. Our zoning still calls it a single-family zoning district. So that's our assessment of that question. So that's all I have in response to those citizen comments.
Perfect. Are we doing the phone tonight, or are we done with the phone?
We're done with the phone for now. I'll allow people to call in if they can't use Zoom. I'll give them the number.
All right. Well, I guess we can, if there's no other citizens comment, we can move into the city manager section.
It looks like someone raised their hand. Hold on.
Yes, this is Jim Williams and my wife Cheryl Williams from Harbor Springs. Just a quick comment. We sent a letter to the mayor and the city manager regarding a dog incident happened last month. It's concerning the regulation 30.101. Our question is, why does the city not adhere to the state and county leash law concerning dogs?
So I believe we have our own ordinance that allows us a dog owner to be in voice command of their dog, and that's the city ordinance as is right now. I don't know. I would have to check with Jim Raymer to see if that's in conflict with state law, but I'm not sure if it is in conflict with any state or county law. The county might have its own, but we have our own ordinance which says the dog must be in voice command.
Yeah, but the dogs that we've run into over the last couple of years here, they're out of control. They're running wild, running loose, and they're aggressive dogs. My wife was knocked down when she was trying to hang on to me. She's still recovering from a back injury because the incident happened about a month ago because of an aggressive dog. Luckily, we were not bit. But I just wonder why we can't have the same regulation that the county and the state would have. The dogs would have to be on a leash when they're off the property.
So, I mean, that's up to council. Council, if you want to relook at this issue and for us to relook at this issue with staff, but I understand, I feel bad, Mr. Williams, for your wife, but I believe I guess you reported this with Kyle, right, Chief Knight? And there's action being taken, as far as my understanding, right, Chief?
That's correct. I just don't know, I don't know where it stands at this time because our law, I got the 30.101 says a dog is not allowed to run at large, but there's no leash law. So I don't know if the prosecutor will authorize anything because of the fact of determination of whether that dog was under control of the owner.
It was not under control. It was running wild. The dog was totally out of control. The person had to go over there and grab their own dog and pull the dog away from us back to the sidewalk. So the dog was out of control. That's our whole argument is we need to have a leash law in Harbor Springs. I mean, to me, it's just real common sense type of thing because we've had more than one incident that's very similar where dogs are just running loose. The owner could be somewhere, but the dog is not trained. The dog is not under control. He's running wild and they're not on a leash. And they're aggressive besides that. And we love dogs. We're not dog haters and we love dogs. You know, I'd love to pet a dog, but I'm not going to pet an aggressive dog that's trying to bite me. So
we just don't know what to expect.
We don't know what to expect when we walk downtown. That's our argument. Because these.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Williams. We'll look into where we stand with the law, and we can probably bring this up again for further council discussion.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, we can get out of there now. We can.
Chief Knight, I think at one point you might have told us what the statistics are, but for this further discussion, it would be helpful to have a history of, you know, how many incidences we've had over the years, what the severity has been, and what we've done about it.
I will get those numbers and have them at the next meeting.
Thank you.
I'll have them prior to that. The numbers that I can gather from our computer-aided dispatch.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Okay. Last call on citizens' comment. All right. You're up, Victor.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. So the first item A is a celebration of Dean Rye's life event, approval of an event that is for a, Dean Rye was actually the chief of Harbor Springs several years ago. We planted a tree in his honor. I guess his wife planted a tree in his honor here at the police station. And now they want to have a memorial service, sort of celebration of his life here at Jean Jardine Park on, I believe it's April 17th. About 50 people in attendance they're expecting. There might be some finger food. It'll be from 1 to 3 p.m. There'll be a sermon, some songs, and then some eating of some food. So, I mean, it's not, you know, one of the concerns we had was with COVID-19 regulations, you know, where those are going to stand in, you know, in 3 months. But at this point, you know, Denny reviewed this, I reviewed this with other staff members, and we have no problem with this event going forward. It's open to the public. Anyone from the public can attend it, and it's short. But I think the only contingency we should have on there would be that if the COVID-19 rules change in the next few months, are more stringent, that they have to adhere to all those rules on gathering limits and social distancing requirements. But other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward. Unless Danny, unless you have any other comments based on your review.
No, I don't, Victor. My only concern was just parking. And I think we can work that out because the gravel parking lot's not going to be full that time of year. So besides COVID, I don't really see any issues with it.
Do we need a motion or anything to approve this, or can we just approve it?
No, this is fine. As long as there's no opposition, we'll have.
Yeah, I don't have
no
a
problem with this.
Dean was a good man. He deserves to be celebrated.
Agreed.
I think it's a great idea. Victor, when we approve events like this, do they get published anywhere? Do they get put on the city calendar or elsewise made public?
We only put usually any events on the city website or that are city sponsored. events, like our DDA or something. We usually don't put events that are sponsored by other groups. The chamber does, and maybe sometimes a DDA if it's in the downtown district, but we don't.
So there would be no public notification of this going on at the park?
No. Though there was, I know Denny is working on a way, I guess Denny is like a calendar eventually about what's going on at what parks. I know that's for internal use, but I don't know if it's for publicized use.
It seems reasonable to me that events in public parks that are taxpayer funded, there should be a way for a taxpayer to find out what's going on.
All right, well, I think we all agree we can move ahead, or they can move ahead with the Dean Rye Life event. And we'll look into this other stuff going forward.
All right, thanks, Mayor. And that probably will be a better discussion where John Leo was going for the next agenda item, which is approval of an updated events on public property policy. Previously, council, we had brought up the idea of, well, there were some discussions about whether or not we should allow private events and or for-profit events on public property. At one of our previous meetings, we determined that, for-profit events were not something that the council wanted to allow, and that nonprofit hosting events on public property would be local nonprofits. So Harbor Springs area is kind of what we define. So Denny McDermott, our Parks Director, I asked him to kind of draft a policy here so we can kind of streamline, make our application process for hosting events and reviewing events on public property a little more clear, a little more consistent, and actually have something written on paper. And Denny, if you want to go and describe a little bit how you drafted this policy. Council, I'm sure, has read my memo, but if Denny, if you just want to go in a little bit into detail on how you drafted this policy.
Yeah, sure. I think, but having been here such a short time, we don't get a lot of applications, but we do get enough that we actually felt that we wanted to make sure that we were being consistent and fair and get responses back to the public in a timely manner. So I researched some of our local municipalities, Emmett County, Charlevoix, Petoskey, Boyne City, and read their policies. Traverse City had a really extensive one, and a lot of them are way more complicated because I think they get a lot more requests. So anyways, I took all that together, researched it, came up with a plan that was going to be very simple. If it's too complicated, it's hard for people to understand, but at the same time, we wanted to be consistent. We started off with gauging events by the number of people attending. But I found after really getting into it, that it really had a lot to do with the impact on the city property and the amount of time that city staff spend either cleaning up or setting up for an event. So I went with Traverse City's model, which was either a low impact or a high impact, a way of gauging it. A low impact would have relatively no impact on from city staff, no time needed to set up for it, or very little time to clean up. The time of the year is a big thing. Like, for instance, this request we got for April 15th is going to work out well. If that same request came July 15th at Marina Park, it would probably be something that maybe we wouldn't do. So there's a lot of factors to go into it. So anyways, we drafted a policy, and we wanted to give it a try after getting some input from everybody here of giving it a try this year. We also didn't want to bog the system down. There's a lot of the requests are relatively low impact. And we thought that I would be able to review those, get back to the person that submitted it if we have any questions. And for those kind of events that I can approve them And then for the large ones, it would have to go through the process.
Yep, and there was one, and thanks, Denny, for that. And as you see on the screen, we have the types of events, approvals, and fees kind of broken down in separate categories. Free to the public, low impact, that could be something like a yoga, yoga class, 5 people wanting to do yoga, wanted to use a section of the park. That doesn't need to, we don't believe that should need to come to council for a whole review, a whole discussion, but something that's free to the public and high impact could have, could be a beer festival, right? A brew fest, have 300 people at Marina Park. That's going to be, a lot of people, high impact, high usage. One of the things we weren't really sure about, and I threw it in there, but I'm not necessarily suggesting that we should approve it, and that's the number 6 here, private events on city property, high impact. So private events on city property that would be low impact would be something like Denny had a good example, was discussing with me. Let's say someone at the top of the boardwalk, 5-6 people wanted to have a 15-minute, 20-minute, ceremony, wedding ceremony. They want to just get married there at the top of the boardwalk. That would be a low impact, not a huge concern. But we got that private event request last year or the year before, I believe, for a wedding on Marina Park, to close down the entire park for a day or 2, essentially, to host a wedding. At that time, council wasn't sure if that's the direction they wanted to go or if we wanted to assess fees for that. So I threw that in there, but hoping that would be the big conversation point here for council to decide whether they want to, approve this policy with any other changes, but especially looking at whether they want to go forward with these fees or allowing private events on property that are high impact. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Mayor and Council.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I read through this. It all looks pretty good to me. The low or private event, low impact, if it's 6 people wanting to get married on top of the boardwalk, I think $100 is a little stiff for that. Other than that, it looks fine to me. I don't think if it's high impact, if someone wants to have a wedding in Marina Park, $500 is a bargain, I think, so.
Yeah, and my concerns there, Mayor, were, I suggested potentially doing, if that's something council wants to do, is allow private events that, we could do maybe even an hourly rate instead of a one-time fee for the event, other, charge like $100 per hour or 200, whatever. That could be a possibility. The reason I put the low impact fee at $100 instead of, I think Denny had proposed $50 or something like that. I increased it a little bit because technically we're closing it off to other people from the public to use. That was my reasoning, that, we're preventing other people from using the space. But I mean, I'm, I guess, indifferent at whether it's 50 or 100. It's not going to be a lot of staff resources to do anything for that event.
Right.
That was just my reasoning for it.
I think that on the private events, that we need to be very cautious about closing off public property for private events, just as a general rule. I was at the meeting when you guys were talking about that big wedding down at Marina Park. John Leo will remember. After the comment. I just think that that's not an okay thing to do in the summertime, to close off our main big park for a private event, especially when it isn't even necessarily with folks that have any they don't live here. It's a beautiful place to be and they want to have their wedding. I think we need to be really cautious of closing public parks for even small private events. I know our daughter got married on Zoll Beach long before it was a dog beach. And we asked the city permission, but we didn't close the beach off. There were other people there. There were sailboats on, that didn't feel right closing the beach off. We used a portion of it, but there were still folks there. My other question about this too is when you talk about small, low impact private events, are we saying that if somebody wants to have a family reunion with 20 people and have a picnic in the park, that they have to ask permission to do that? Or are we just saying if they wanted to close the park to anyone else, they have to ask permission?
So you don't necessarily need permission to use the park, but if you're going to use the park in a way that's going to essentially prevent others from using it in a normal way, then yeah, you would probably need to come get approval. So I think some people setting up to do, maybe just throwing a Frisbee or, a few families coming together to sit at the
Right.
tables and put some tables together. That's the intended use, right? You have plenty of tables at Marina Park. If they want to occupy 5, 6 tables and, push them together, I don't think that's an idea. But I think the idea is to, when you're using that park for a purpose that's not normally happening every single day, right? You're not normally having, closing off a certain section of the park to do yoga classes or to have, a wedding, for example, or to have a festival. But it's going to be kind of and it's kind of be a work in progress here. We're going to have to kind of see, what kind of gatherings, to test those limits. And maybe, when Denny's out there and their staff is out there and they see, a get together of like 100 people deciding to start playing a football game in the middle of the park, that's, that could, provide us some incentive to, maybe change this process up a little bit and get the word out a little bit. But I don't know. It's going to have to kind of be a wait and see kind of thing. I think the idea is to continue going on with the types of event requests that we get. And the idea for like number 1, free to public, low impact. So that whole idea is those things that someone wants to bring out their guitar and just play a song for an hour. That doesn't need to go through a whole council approval. Someone wants to have a yoga session, those things that normally would be allowed, but maybe they want to reserve that space, right? So the idea is if they apply, they can have that space, that spot reserved for a couple hours versus just showing up to a park
Okay.
and maybe not be able to have some space available for them. So
it's really reserving the space, setting it aside and reserving it because they want, I could see someone requesting to use the city dock to get married on. I could very easily see that that's sort of an in thing now by the water. And I think that's something we'd have to be really careful about, that public space for private use. But that helps, Victor. So it's more if it wants to be reserved, if we want to say nobody else can be on this part of the park from 2 to 3 in the afternoon or something, as opposed to just a family gathering and having a picnic. And if one park doesn't work, they'll just move to a different park to do it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'm not in favor of number 6. Maybe with some more definition, I could change my mind. But high impact private events on city property doesn't feel like something we want to do. Certainly subject to more discussion. I noticed that the police chief is part of the approval process in high impact events, not in low impact, and that kind of makes sense. I appreciate Denny's position, not trying to bog us down with a really complicated system. However, I think the police department should be aware of all events that are approved, whether it's by approval or notification, whatever it is. But recent activities kind of, I think, emphasize the need for the police department to be aware of everything that's going on in the city. And
I can speak on that. For the low impact events, after I received the application, review it, obviously I would have a conversation with Victor, and if we had any questions, I'd get back to applicant. But there would be a follow-up email to the chief and to the DPW director to let them know what's going on, just so they're aware of it. So that would be the process for the low impact. So they might not be, they would be able to give us any kind of concerns, but there'd be a follow-up email so at least they know what's going on.
Okay, that's great. I would suggest that be added to the policy, just so that people who read it are aware.
Sure.
And then there's a comment here that says events canceled within 7 days of the event are eligible for a full refund. Within the 7 days or outside of the 7 days? It says you need to apply at least 30 days prior to the event. Received within 7 days are eligible, so at any time they'll get a full refund.
It should be are not eligible within 7 days.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
And then I reiterate the thought that the public should be aware of all events that are planned for public spaces within the city. So whatever mechanism we can develop to notify the public of these, especially if we have advance notice that should be made public.
And do we feel, are we in concurrence that we should not allow number 6?
I personally think we should have it there, but like that big wedding event and stuff we talked about last year, having a big reception and stuff there, I don't really agree with. But if somebody wants to get married down the waterfront and stuff like that, you're seeing it all over the place. And now with COVID, everybody else is here. I think we should leave it there, but just kind of have it on a per use basis.
Okay,
or like
and that
Victor-
may be the case. I'm just going off of the definition 3, high impact, that, affect normal use on city property.
Right.
I mean, the one thing I can say about, I'm not a fan of having large private events on public property. The one thing is, if it could be a completely, as I mentioned here, a city council decision. So you can take each case that comes up to you, comes to council on a case-by-case situation and say, you know what, we don't feel like at this time of the year, this kind of event we should allow.
Okay.
So that's the only thing I can think of leaving it in there. You guys, I mean, it may be that we can just take it out and say they're not allowed, just like for-profit events are not permitted, but that's obviously up to you guys. But that was my thinking about leaving it in there, just to give council the ability to decide if they not, because example, you may not want to allow a private event at Marina Park, but Jean Jardine Park, it might not be as big of a deal. I mean, depending on the time of the year, right? That was the kind of talk we had last time.
It's a good point.
I
guess as long as it comes to council, then you get into the subjectivity of why yes to one and no to another, but it's worth the discussion.
I think we maybe should put under the fee though, Victor, maybe to be determined rather than a set fee if we're going to leave 6 in, because there's a huge variety in those private events. So,
And my concern with that, and Jim, we might have to do some more research on that, but my concern was fees should be something that are set in stone and not subjective. And I think we as a council have to approve and adopt the fee. Am I mistaken there, Jim?
Well, subjectivity can be discriminatory as well. So it's difficult, I think, to just have something that's determined on a case-by-case basis. I will say too, I would be, for council to be put in a position to have to make a determination on these private events, I think it's a tough call, because saying no is hard. And it's somebody comes in and makes an application.
No.
There's sympathy. It's difficult to say no. And I think, especially council, I mean, you're elected, and maybe it's somebody that you know. And how do you say no? I think it's difficult. So my view on it is you should decide whether you should allow them at all. I respect John Cupp's view on this, but if the consensus of council is that having this, for example, the wedding reception on Marina Park, I don't know how you can justify that anytime, really, because then the public can't use it. And what benefit is there to the public from that event other than getting a $500 fee? So anyway, that's my thought. If you're going to do it, I think you should have a set fee, minimum. I don't know. That's my thought.
where does, say a kid's birthday party at Kiwanis Park, which would be a private event on public space, what happens with something like that?
So right now we have exempted Kiwanis Park building for renting that out because it currently requires a $100 deposit for cleaning. And we're kind of, our decision right now is to keep on going with the current practice for Kiwanis Park, renting out the Kiwanis Park building.
But if we do decide that we don't want to do private events on public property, then Kiwanis falls under that. Is that correct?
Well,
There's a one difference here, and the difference, Nancy, is that this private event would be closing it off to the public. So if a kid wants to have a birthday party, and they want to say, no, you can't come into this space because I'm having a birthday party,
Right.
that would not be allowed. But if
Okay.
they're having a birthday party, yep, you get it.
Okay. So if somebody wanted to have a small private event in a park, but they weren't going to close the park, I don't have as much of an issue with that as I do anybody who asks us to close off the park so they can have a private event. I have an issue with on public property.
And that's our definition here for private events, is we have events that exclude or prohibit the general public from attendance.
Okay.
So that's how we defined it. So just for this policy.
So maybe we don't want to have private events at all. If it's this is a question, if it's going to exclude the public from the parks. That's a question for council.
That is a question.
That is a question. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I don't think that could happen at all if they're going to exclude public use of that park.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, if they want to get married at the park, they've got to share it with everyone else in town. And, I mean, people aren't going to butt into their marriage ceremony, I don't think. But yeah, maybe a little more.
I think from my standpoint, maybe we should pull the private out for this first year, see what kind of applications we actually get for people that really are requesting to shut the park down except for their event. We may not even have many of those at all. They may say we want to get married down there, but if other people are walking by and cut through the park, that's fine. I mean, that would be,
right.
I would be comfortable pulling that private out for the first year and see what we get for applications.
See if there's a demand for it.
Yeah, see if it's even something people ask to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I like that.
Yeah.
So to be clear, we were suggesting removing numbers 5 and 6 from this policy, with understanding that we're not banning having private gatherings. We're just banning the act of closing down a public space for a private event. So people still can gather privately. They don't need to invite the public to attend. They can have their birthday parties, their wedding, but they just can't exclude the public from that space.
Okay, but 5 is defined as low impact, and low impact says does not affect local use of the park. So why would we eliminate it?
Right. And I think that goes back, John, to what you were saying earlier, is at least if we keep number 5, we know what's going on. Where if we remove it, then we don't know the events happening. And also that's our way of managing it. If you elect to go with number 5 then you have to send in your application. Part of the application is going to say that you have to make sure other people are aware to use that public facility. But if we take 5 out, then it's probably going to happen without us knowing, and we might not have any recourse.
But what are we, and I'm not arguing, I'm just trying to understand if somebody wants to have a family reunion in the park, but they're not going to exclude anybody else using the park, then why do we care if we know about it? I mean, what is the reason? They're not asking the city to do anything.
No, but if you're going to have a family reunion with 50 or 60 people there, it'd be good to know what's going on.
Right.
So it probably makes sense to remove 6 for right now, and keep 5 just so we have some kind of accountability.
Well, and to be clear, there's no, if there's a birthday, a gathering, there's going to be no reprimand for people gathering. I mean, this is more of a way just to encourage people and to organize it. So if people gather, this policy doesn't prohibit anyone from gathering privately in a public space. I mean, it doesn't do that.
No, the only thing this is really doing is keeping it so we can manage Marina Park, and maybe the beach area. The rest of our parks, it's kind of a no-brainer, and it doesn't matter one way or the other. But Marina Park's, the biggest issue we got when people want to come down there and shut things off. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, let's.
I think
take up-
Danny did a great job getting this put together.
Yeah.
I would say remove 6, keep 5 in there, remove 6. And if we get a request for some kind of major event, then they got to come to us anyway, and we can review and discuss it then to see if it will fit into anything that we want.
So Victor, what do you need from council?
Well, we need council to approve of this policy as well as any of the fees associated with them. So, for example, $50 fee for the number 4 local nonprofit that charges a fee.
Okay.
You can resolve.
Well, then I guess I would make a motion to approve as presented with the elimination of item 6, the correction of the cancellation window for any fees that have been paid, and the clarification about who will be informed as part of the process to make sure that everybody's up to date.
I'll second that.
Motion by Leo, second by Cups, to approve the events on public lands policy with the provision that number 6 is eliminated and the cancellation window is updated. And I believe it was stated that the police chief was to be included in the notifications.
Well, to add the verbiage that Denny came up with, he already has an idea of who's going to be notified. Just put that in the policy so that anybody that reads the policy is aware.
Yes, sir. I'll take care of that.
Thanks, Denny.
Sure thing. And I have to say, everybody else's event policies are way more complicated. A lot of them have scoring sheets where you check off stuff and then they add it up. And I don't think our intention was to make it a money, making process. We just wanted to make sure that we got some fees based on the public officers and the DPW and park staff that spend time in our parks. So
Well,
I think this is a good start for us.
Yeah, we've never had anything before. Now you're here. So this is a stepping stone going, in a different direction. So
good start.
You got to start somewhere.
Thank you.
Guerra,
Yes.
Cups,
Yes.
Rondell,
Yes.
Dyka,
Yes.
and Leo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you, council members. We will move on to the last item on our city manager's section of the agenda, and that's an update on the bike path progress. So I've invited Joe O'Neill from Benchmark here to answer any questions on the technical aspects of this, and I believe we also have Doug Fuller from Harbor Way. I know Al Dyka, you're also as well on that committee as well, so you're privy to part of this conversation already. But so a few months ago, the city submitted our proposal to MDOT to use the tunnel under M119 as a pedestrian or a bike path. MDOT informally reviewed that process, and their response, as you see in the packet, was not overwhelmingly positive. They had a lot of questions and concerns, and they essentially said it would probably be unlikely that they would approve it if we formally submitted an application. Since 2007, I'm bringing this up because, for the last few years, we've been kind of jumping from one design to the next design. The FEMA spillway situation kind of, altered our plans a little bit with the knowledge that we might potentially be able to use that spillway as a bike path. But since 2017, we've spent at least $32,000, and I say at least $32,000 because, I'm not sure we found every single line item. We had to go through all the line items from the bills from a benchmark to see what was for what. But anyway, we spent at least $32,000 on engineering fees for bike path designs and engineered plans and permitting. And that's typical for, a project to, but except we don't know which direction we're going. We've been going in different directions for a few years now. And I don't want to move forward with spending more money on engineering or designing unless council has a discussion about our options and gives me a clear direction on how they want to proceed. So I discussed the options with Benchmark Engineering as well as the Harbor Way Committee to get a better understanding of their preferred bike routes as well as the costs. The preferred route for safety is still the tunnel. Obviously, everyone feels that that's much more safer than any at-grade crossing. But after talking with Benchmark and a little bit with reviewing MDOT's requests, the adjustments that MDOT's requesting from us would just significantly increase the cost of the project. We're talking about at least $600,000 to build the bike path going through the tunnel, as opposed to a $400,000 cost that we had anticipated for a few years ago for an at-grade crossing to Tourist Park, which would also include improvements to Tourist Park parking design, the parking lot design, and et cetera. So we're talking about a substantially more expensive option for going the tunnel route. That may be okay if Harbor Way, the committee, and Harbor Inc. and others are able to fundraise for that money. But it's not going to be so much, I guess, clear if we can do that if the city has to come up with half the money, a third of the money. It's much harder to come up with, for us, $200,000 for a $600,000 project versus $50,000 for maybe a $300,000-$400,000 project. So that was one concern I had about using the spillway, going with a tunnel option, is just that the costs could become much more, could be greater than even the $600,000. So the other alternatives that we've discussed were, again, a crossing kind of by Reynolds Field, just a little bit east of Bay Bluffs, crossing M119 to Tourist Park, right there by Ottawa Stadium, overlooking Ottawa Stadium. That option, like I said, was less expensive, but there are safety concerns that we go from 40 to 50 miles per hour at that crossing. There's been a lot of accidents or near accidents at that intersection, and Chief Knight can tell you all about that. It's just a much more dangerous option. The other option that's not necessarily on these plans, but that have been discussed and I brought up recently to the Harbor Way Committee, was following Hoyt Street south and then taking that sidewalk on the north side of M119 down to Zoll and crossing Zoll. We already have a sidewalk on that side, but the idea was, again, that was an at-grade crossing, and we still wanted to try going with the tunnel before we resort to using an at-grade crossing. So here we are at the point where, do we submit a formal application knowing that it's might be unlikely that MDOT will reject it, which means we'd spend some more money on engineering and permitting and designs to get that there? Or do we proceed going down another route? Part of me is, it might cost a few more $1,000s, but let's just give it one last shot to apply for the tunnel and see what MDOT says. And if they reject that, then we can decide whether or not we want to appeal that decision or not. But we've put this much into it. I don't think it's going to be that cumbersome cost-wise compared to what we've already spent to go for it. But I think we need to keep our costs in mind as we continue going down this project. So I want to get council's opinion and give you the opportunity to ask Joe about any of the technical aspects of the different routes and the engineering that goes along with that. And he could probably even explain better than I could ever about MDOT's reasoning for rejecting and what they want to see and what that could look like. So I'll open it up, Mayor, to council for any questions or discussion.
Well, I'm curious to see why they made us do all that and now they don't want us to use it for anything. I mean, that doesn't make sense.
MDOT.
Yeah. I mean, it cost us how many millions of dollars, and then now they won't let us use it for what it was kind of built for? That doesn't make any sense. Why the hell did we build it then? Joe, I mean, what's your thought with MDOT?
I can respond to that. That tunnel was designed for a floodway. And I know Tom Richards at the time tried to make it very clear to everybody that the purpose of that was a floodway. That's all it was approved for. And that's why it's sized the way it is. So MDOT, to be fair, MDOT didn't review that as a bike tunnel at the time.
As I remember it, we intentionally did not bring up the topic of using it as either a walkway or a bike path at the time for fear, this is the way Tom explained it, for fear that it would complicate approvals with MDOT for the spillway.
That's true. That's exactly right.
That's why there was no mention of it early on.
Yep.
Maybe we
So-
should look at the alternative. Too late.
So, and John, Joe and I spoke to, several months ago, we spoke to MDOT officials on the phone, and I don't think even in that conversation, they quite understood. And Joe, you can maybe get a little more details here about the likeliness of any kind of flood event, normal rain event causing any issues for people using that tunnel. They're still focused on things that I don't think they quite understand. But Joe, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
I can. I see you had a copy of the memo I sent you, and I think what we're running into is it's a very unusual floodway because historically the big floods have been in the winter. So they're using these high flows and kind of projecting that as to how that would affect a bike path. And they got into the discussions of having an automatic gate, a measuring system to measure the water that comes through, and a gate that would automatically come down, and all sorts of things like that. But practically speaking, if you get a once in 100-year flood in April because of snow melt and rain and whatever, you're not going to have any bikes in there or pedestrians. And so it's a communication thing, but I think they look at it simply as, here's a culvert. It's projected to carry 457 cubic feet per second of water, and you want to have bikes and pedestrians in it. We see that as a problem. It's, in my opinion, they're not looking at the bike path being a spring, summer, fall situation and not a winter situation. So I think that's a large part of it.
No common sense.
Are they aware that there's the stairway down to it for people to walk down the stairs?
Yes, they are.
So how did they say okay to that if they're afraid there are going to be pedestrians that the floodwaters are going to take out?
Well, and we kind of asked that question, and
Okay.
I think the final answer we got is, well, I guess we didn't notice it.
Well, sorry. Oops.
Wow.
That's part of what we're dealing with.
Are they willing to come up and look at it? I mean, have they actually been up here to see it?
The short answer is yes. I think when Victor and I talked to him, I think they had come up to look at it at that time, yes.
But then there was a moment when we asked them to come up for another meeting. I think that was a time of COVID that they said they weren't coming up, I guess, for site meetings for that. They did have, but they saw it before we had any of these engineered plans submitted, basically.
Well, I guess for sense of discussion, we've gotten this far. I guess your best judgment, I would say let's try to get it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to stop just short, I guess.
I agree. I mean, unless we don't feel there's just any chance of doing it, if we think we can make a logical argument for why it should be possible, and we'll come up with thoughts about if they really truly have an objection about the probability of a once in 100-year flood occurring, coming up with talking points around that and try to push it forward. But I agree with John. Let's not give up at this point.
Joe, those are good points. Joe, is there, just thinking ahead here, if MDOT rejects the permit, what kind of appeal process is it? Do you know?
I don't know is a short answer.
Okay.
What we ran into before is we met with 6 or 7 MDOT representatives. They each have their own facet of what they look at, and the hydraulics person was the impediment to where we are now. And like I said earlier, he's looking at looking at numbers that aren't necessarily representative of what we're trying to use it for when we're trying to use it.
Right.
What I understand the explanation, Joe, and this is going to go back a ways, and you tried to explain to us neophytes really what we were trying to deal with the floodplain. But as I understand it, you would need a really, really cold winter. You would need a hard freeze well into the spring, and you need heavy rains to create the kind of flood situation that this is designed for.
That's correct.
So the argument would be, or the rationale, not argument, the rationale would be, given normal year-to-year conditions, the risk is, I won't say it's non-existent, but it's insignificant.
Yeah, the study we did in 2003, which was a fairly exhaustive study that FEMA actually adopted, pointed out that in the summer, instead of 457 cubic feet per second, it's actually 88. So it's a huge, huge difference. And
Right.
those of us who have lived here for a long time have seen that. In the summer, I think last July, we had close to a 50-year event. And I'm not sure, I wasn't there to see exactly how much water came through. I think Andy Potter mentioned he had a video or whatever, but there was probably a couple of inches of water coming through the tunnel. And that was a pretty significant event.
So a data-driven approach based on what you just said should have a pretty good chance of making the argument for us.
And I spent a little bit of time trying to find with that rainfall event how much water came, and I haven't been able to find that.
The one in the summer, are you talking about, Joe?
Yeah, in July.
Yeah, and I think I remember it. I mean, our house is at the bottom of the spillway. And yes, we looked at it and we said, yep, the spillway works. The water is channeled down Zoll Street the right way, but it wasn't, you could certainly have ridden a bike through it safely. You know, it wasn't any standing water at all coming out of there. And what if we said we would close it in the winter? If their numbers, the data says our biggest danger is when the ground is still frozen, we put a gate across it. We don't open it till the ground is thawed in May or something like that. I mean, to help convince them.
That's basically what I was trying to say, you know, given maybe at certain temperatures, at certain points during the year, we would agree to close it down. Exactly.
Yeah.
This is something that we discussed with them on the phone several months ago. And that's when they said, well, maybe, you know, give us something informally. And that's when we prepared what we did. So it's just going to be, again, you know, Joe and I, we can work on, you know, presenting maybe a narrative, a more extensive narrative that accompanies any engineering submissions for the permit. But it's going to take some, I guess, some creative thinking here to try to explain it to them, because we've talked to them on the phone and through email, and they just, there's some resistance, some hesitancy on their end. I don't know what it looks like and how to maneuver around that. And just something Joe and I have talked about a little bit is how do we convince them? But I mean, this is if council is, so that's why I brought this here, just to make sure that we're okay with continue going this way, knowing that we spent that much money so far in the course of 4 years. And I get it, you know, but my duty, my responsibility to bring to you when I'm going to spend several $1,000s in engineering fees for a project that might not come out. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that.
Oh, thank you for being upfront about it.
Yeah.
I
think it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should move forward on it. You know, take one more run at it. And
I think that if they'll even consider it, it won't happen quickly. It won't be in the next year or two that the city would be awarded any money of any kind because of the condition of the state and the governor's focus on roads. I've got some friends that are close to those at the top of MDOT, and they did some research for me, and that was their report back to me, that, you know, they were saying it might take 5 years to get something like this approved and funded. And I think we should still pursue it. I don't think that should slow us down or stop it. But I think in the meantime, we might have to do the improve the crosswalk at the bottom of the East Hill and use that Zoll Street option temporarily. But because I think that needs to be addressed soon. We got to give some safe passage for people quickly. But the tunnel is the ultimate solution to this thing, and I think we should keep working at it.
Agreed.
And Denny did put up a few signs along the route bike path because people were getting confused, and Kyle can attest to that, of where the bicyclists were going down Lake Street as opposed to going downtown. So we did put up a couple signs leading them down Pine Street and the north side of M119 to get to downtown Harbor Springs. But Al, I believe you're talking about some sort of crossing of M119 there at Zoll Street. And Joe, I believe we probably have to apply for a permit to put some sort of crosswalk, or no, at Zoll Street, Zoll and M119?
I would think so, yes.
Yeah. All right. So that's something we can probably also, if council's fine with that, if we think, it might be a few years. One of the things that MDOT recommended in their email to us, even if they did approve it, they would like to see a 5-year monitoring period of water flows. And I assume that to mean that a 5-year monitoring period before we even allow pedestrians or bicyclists to use it. So Al might be right in the sense that we may need to just, find a temporary alternate route until we know for sure about the tunnel.
Now, just to clarify, we're not looking for any funding from the state, are we?
Not at this point. The funding should be primarily the Harbor Way Committee, Harbor Inc. would be primarily seeking that funding unless they need assistance from us on applying as a municipality for MDOT funding or any other kind of state funding. But right now, we're just seeking approval to use it.
Right.
We do have a comment from Doug Fuller. Doug, you can go ahead and speak. Doug is from
Hi,
Harbor Way.
everybody. So I'm Doug Fuller. I'm the chair of the Harbor Way Committee. And we're, I think everything that you've discussed kind of reflects our views too. So that, I think it would be worth going ahead. Although, originally we, viewed the tunnel as being not only safer, but cheaper and easier. And so some of those, it looks like it might not necessarily be cheaper or easier, but I think the safety part of it still, is the most important thing at this point. And, maybe it's not that much cheaper. But anyway, as far as fundraising, we several years ago, we were all set to go ahead with the Reynolds Field to Tourist Park crossing. That looked like the most feasible one. And so, we were really committed to trying to find as much funding as we could for it. And we had several ideas. I'm not a fundraiser personally. Some of the other people on our committee or the Harbor Inc. staff are more into tune to that. And plus our partners at the Trail Council, they really have their hands on the pulse of different kinds of funding opportunities. But anyway, likely there would be some state grants that would potentially fund something like this that we would pursue. And I don't know who, I'm not that familiar with them. I don't know who would be the fiduciary agent, whether it would have to be the city or, local government, or we could do it as a nonprofit. But so anyway, just to answer someone's question, there very well could be some governmental grants that would be sought for to help pay for part of this.
I just have a comment about the crosswalk at the bottom of Zoll, bottom of the East Hill. We did talk about that at one other point that was discussed, and it was moved down by Nelson Street rather than right at the bottom of the hill. There's a crosswalk down by Nelson. I think there was some concern about putting a crosswalk right at the bottom of that hill because there's so many people turning right and left off Zoll Street and Main Street right there. So I don't remember the specifics of why it wasn't put there. If they just decided safety wise, that wasn't the best place for it. So I don't know, that's a very congested corner in the summertime. So I don't know if you really want your bikes crossing Main Street right there. It would certainly be safer if they crossed down by Nelson Street where there is already a crosswalk.
Yeah, the idea was, Nancy, and I don't know if Joe or anyone else was involved in that conversation about the crosswalks where they were placed, but the part of being an official bike path is how wide you can make the sidewalks. So the crosswalk for maybe pedestrian sidewalk purposes was done for Nelson, but for example, on running from M119 all the way to Bay Street, essentially, we have that, I don't know, 8-10 foot sidewalk that's meant for a bike path. So that's one thing to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But no,
a tricky corner, as you well know. That's a super tricky corner to get people across the road there. That's, I'm sure, why we looked at crossing them up top initially.
This is Denny. I did get a hold of the Trails Council because if you're aware, right by their office there, just by the state park, they have that medium crossing there.
That's
where
awful.
bikes can go halfway across. And they said that really wasn't working as they had hoped.
Yeah,
So
that's not a good plan.
I don't think it's a good plan
No.
either.
Not at all.
No, it's very
And
scary.
I did send some more feelers out to the DNR and some other municipalities to see what they're doing. Or just coming up with some options.
Okay.
If we cross them into towards Park, which I think is great because the view there is awesome, then the trail would come down right besides the spillway. And I just think that would look really bad. You got a spillway and then right next to it, you have another trail.
Well,
Yep, right here.
That doesn't make sense.
No, unfortunately, it doesn't. I like the plans to upgrade towards Park though. Doug, nice job. Maybe we could still do that part.
Okay.
so Victor, do you have what you need?
Yes, I do. I think that I pretty much have a consensus here that keep on going, trying for the spillway, and then we'll Joe and I will get together to work on that permit application process, and we'll march forward and see what happens.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, seeing that that's the last item under city manager section, really briefly, updates on the city manager's report. Again, thank you, Kyle, for everything you've done. And I know Kyle didn't mention this at the beginning, but we'd like to reassure everyone that it's safe to visit downtown and to be in downtown. There's no active ongoing threat or sense of any threat being downtown. So we have holiday lighting will remain downtown through February 15th, but as we just saw earlier in the conversation, that we'll keep it on through March 15th as of now, and then we can reconsider that later. The epidemic orders. So we still there's still limits on indoor gatherings. So in-person public meetings are still prohibited. And we are required to work remotely to the greatest extent possible. However, we are increasing, we are opening City Hall to the public. We did today, and we had a lot of people coming in our doors. So our staff will be here, and we'll be doing less remote work and more in-person work as we deal with people coming in and out of the office. Some basic data. We had quite a busy January month, and a lot of that has to do with the bomb threat. We had a lot of people visiting our website the day of, the day after. So
Sure.
it did wonders for our website traffic. But no, so boards and commissions, we had the Planning Commission met on January 21st, reviewed a special land use request, and also discussed again some political sign and flag ordinance language, as well as administrative ordinance language for allowing temporary exceptions to those aspects of the zoning code related to the outdoor dining discussion that we were having earlier. And I had a few meetings as well with MPPA and our Emmett County Transit Authority work group meeting, as well as talking a little bit with the Historical Society about the AHA and potentially moving that to Shea Park as of course, as you heard earlier, a Harbor Way Committee meeting on the bike path. I did mention this, I think, in the email to council members, but we did have a workplace safety staff training that Kyle, Chief Knight, led. This was probably the day before the presidential inauguration, just with the atmosphere, the national atmosphere. We wanted to make sure that our staff was prepared to deal with any potential threat or emergency at the workplace. So just want council to know that staff has had an opportunity to attend that training. We got our questions. We know what our concerns are and where we're comfortable. So thanks again to Chief Knight for also leading that discussion as well. And that is what I have for the manager's report, unless there's any questions.
I just wanted to make a comment. Chief Knight went to great lengths to thank all the people that were involved in the incident downtown, having listened to him on the scanner and just talking to other people who were involved. I want to thank him. You know, everybody came to town, went into his office and looked at him to lead them in this exercise. And I think he did a stellar job. And I think that should be recognized. So thank you for keeping us safe, Kyle.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Mayor, just a second, if that's all right.
Go ahead, Kyle.
I told you I'd report back at the next council meeting about the dogs, and these Zoom things are awesome because I can kill two birds with one stone. So in 2020, we had 24 loose dog calls. They consisted of people calling about a stray dog that was just wandering, and also somebody's dog was off the leash. The majority of those were like a stray dog that was wandering somewhere that had probably got away from its home. But for 2020, we had 24 loose dog calls.
Were any of those dog attacks?
Maybe 4 of them where people called in concerned because a dog was approaching them that was off a leash.
Right. So pretty minimal.
But, I do think that it warrants having maybe an agenda item toward it, because I do know that there are lots of dogs that aren't on leashes and really aren't totally under control, especially also on the dog beach a lot. That is a big issue. So I think it warrants having some more discussion about it at some point. Even if it's only 2 or 3 dogs in a year that have really, I'm going to say, attacked someone or aggressively come to people. We want to be a town where people feel comfortable walking, and enjoying it. And so I have some concerns about that too. So I think we should put it as an agenda item to look at that
topic.
Could I mention something? There is a section of the code, 60.110, that is quite extensive, dealing with dogs off leash.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what else you could have. It's very clear, it's enforceable, and if there's a violation, that people have to be cited. I mean, if you can identify who the owner is, and if you can't, then the animal control officer for the county should be called to get rid of the animal.
Jim, is that the one that talks about how they have to be under either verbal or something else control?
They have to be on a leash unless they
are
under direct command of the owner and they are obedient. So if that is not the case, they're in violation of the ordinance.
So what I'm gathering here, Jim, though, from Nancy and others, is that maybe there's going to be a question about whether we should say they must be on a leash at all times.
I don't agree with that. I think we just need to start holding people accountable. Give them a fine, do whatever. But how many hundreds of thousands of dogs are running around our city or area year round?
Maybe this is why we need a separate council discussion on it.
Yeah.
So we
I think
exactly.
Yeah, I think we should put it somewhere, however you do that, on the agenda, whatever.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
The last thing, Mayor, is just that the FBI, I spoke with them last Friday, and they are working diligently to try to help us find a suspect. So we are working on that. They are definitely helping us, and they have some small certainty that they might be able to locate somebody.
Great.
Good.
Good.
Guess, Mayor, that's it for the manager's report / other things.
I have a question about the AHA.
Oh, yeah,
Has that been restored or is it still the
it's
hulk that
being
it was?
restored. Yeah, it's being restored. Still, it's probably, it can be done as soon as we want it to be done or as long as it needs to take. They're still getting rid of many of the bullet holes that are in the boat, but it could likely be ready, May, June. And then after speaking with Kristen Baylog of the Historical Society, our plan is to come to council sometime in March with a proposal on following up our proposal from several months ago on how and where to locate the AHA vessel at Shea Park. So we'll be coming to council with an update on that probably in the next few meetings.
Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I've got a volunteer for the tree committee, Karen Stroh. She's wants to be on our tree advisory board. She volunteered to help us do our fundraising for the property purchase, but is very interested in getting involved in what's happening in the town. So I think this is a good place for her to start, and pending any objections from council, I'd like to appoint her to the tree board.
Good idea.
Sounds great. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Well,
Thanks,
Karen,
Karen.
I see you're watching and listening, so you are now officially a member of the tree board. Congratulations. And I guess it's time for, yeah, thank you. Perfect. Any new or old business at the table tonight?
I just got a question for Denny. I wondered if he's been able to gather any information on the use up at Kiwanis. I know the hills used quite a bit with sledding and kids. I'm just curious if you came up with anything yet.
Yeah, I do. I'm keeping attendance on the calendar. I can report at our next meeting if you would like.
Okay, yeah.
Great.
Excellent.
Great. I wanted to say thank you to the staff for getting some signs up downtown about mask. I noticed them when I drove through today coming home from work, and there's a number of them up, which I think is good because it catches people when they're walking and driving into town. So whoever, I know Andy put some of them up, and I appreciate that. Thanks for making that happen.
That was Margot
Okay.
worked on that
All
with
right.
staff as well. So yep.
Yep,
Was a
I
team
appreciate.
effort.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think it's great, especially before President's Weekend when we tend to have folks in town. So thanks for doing that.
You're welcome.
All right. There's no other new or old business.
Nothing from me.
All right. I guess we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Stay safe, everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you also.
Yep.
Take care. Good night.